What is consciousness? And what does it mean to truly live life awake? Welcome to Clarity to Consciousness, a podcast where we transcend beyond stereotypes, embracing a deeper understanding. I'm your host, Kristen Griffiths, a fellow seeker on this path. Join me on a journey as we dive into conversations with experts, unraveling stigmas, and expanding our awareness to something profound. This is your invitation to open your mind with me as together we bring clarity to the fascinating complexities of human consciousness. Welcome back to Clarity to Consciousness, the show where we explore and clarify the vast and often mysterious terrain of human consciousness. I'm your host, Kristen Leigh Griffiths, and today's episode, it touches on the very core of what it means to be in a human body, living a life that may be far more intentional than we had ever imagined. What if the soul, it doesn't just arrive here randomly? What if, before we were born, we chose our challenges, we chose our relationships, and our traumas even, as a part of a larger blueprint for our soul's growth? My guest today, she's a spiritual teacher, she's an intuitive leader and a mentor. And she's somebody whose life journey was both profound and deeply human. Her journey includes significant trauma, spiritual awakening, and a reclamation of her soul's purpose. She has one of the most compelling stories that I have ever heard, and I'm really, really excited to bring her on today because she's also a lot of fun to listen to and chat with. She's here today to not only share that personal story of hers, but also explore this concept of a pre-birth plan, sometimes called a soul contract, and what it means to live life that has been chosen on a higher level. A concept that really has helped me truly embody this sentiment that life is not happening to you, but it is happening for you. And it's really an honor to have her here today. Please welcome Betty Guadagno, or better known as Buddha Betty, to the show.
Hey, Kristen, thanks so much. I'm so grateful to be here. Can't wait to get into all of this spiritual conversation around this topic.
Thank you so much. So I had first heard you on Next Level Soul, which for those of you who have not heard of that podcast / YouTube channel, it's huge and incredible. And you shared your experience there. And I'm so excited to have you here to share it with us and our audience. So to start, would you talk a little bit about this extraordinary journey, where you came from, all of this trauma that you experienced, and what brought you to where you are today?
Yeah. So trigger warning, even though you already kind of encapsulated it in the intro, but my life was really traumatizing before my experience. So I dealt with a lot of dense human experiences, like sexual trauma as a child, and then as a teenager and a young adult. It kind of followed me throughout my life. I grew up really impoverished. I grew up with drug addicted parents. My parents both committed suicide in 2007 in a suicide pact because of their drug addiction and because of their impoverishment. And so I was constantly trying to medicate and sedate my very real, overwhelming feelings of abandonment and betrayal and rejection and trauma. And drugs became my best friend. They became my guiding star. They became my higher power. They were God. I was a militant atheist before my spiritual experience. There was no room for God in my life because drugs were my God. And I followed that path all throughout my life. And I hit bottom after bottom. And I've overdosed multiple times. I've gone to over a dozen detoxes and rehabs. I've been through withdrawal over 20 times in my life, physical withdrawal, agonizing withdrawal. And then in 2019, I overdosed again. But this particular time that I overdosed led to a near-death experience, even though that had never happened before. I didn't believe in anything bigger than myself. So I just assumed that my whole experience was drug-induced psychosis. I just thought, wow, I took a bunch of drugs and then I thought I was talking to God. That's weird. And it was the beginning, it was the catalyst of my spiritual awakening journey. It took me months to realize what happened to me was a real experience. It took me years to integrate the experience, find language for it, be able to share about it in a comprehensive way. But part of my experience was that I was shown my pre-birth planning. I was shown that I actually designed my life. All the trauma, all the tragedy, all the triumph was all predetermined. And so that was such a huge, significant part of my awakening journey, because like you just shared, I'm not a victim to my circumstance. I am a divine co-creator of my reality. And so my spiritual experience brought that knowledge to me. And I've spent every day since then solidifying the fact that I am a co-creator. I co-create with the divine, and it's actually a really cool experience.
Wow. Okay, so I'm gonna dig into some of what you shared a little bit, if that's okay. So I guess as somebody who watched drug addiction, how was it? Didn't it scare the crap out of you to actually get involved with drugs? How did that transpire?
Yeah, for me, it didn't scare me. It made me want to try to do it better. So I thought, wow, my parents are idiots. They don't know how to use drugs. They keep getting evicted. They're so poor. They don't know how to do this right. I'll figure out how to do it the right
Mm.
way. And, I watched other people in my family struggle with drug addiction too and die from it and have their lives ruined because of it. But I really thought that I was going to figure out a way to do it better. And I was in such an extreme amount of emotional pain because of all of the sexual, physical, and emotional abuse that I had gone through, that I needed something to sedate myself and to medicate myself. And at first it was food. That was my first drug of choice, was using food to medicate myself, sugar. Then it was binge watching TV shows. I would sit in front of the TV as a little kid for hours, totally zoned out into cartoons to just escape my feelings, to escape my reality. And then it went into fantasy addiction. I would play and I would imagine and I would just disappear from this reality and go into a reality where my life was not my life.
And would you say the peak or what the pinnacle of what caused you to kind of spiral into drugs was seeing your parents unfortunately commit suicide?
Oh no, I was already a drug addict way before that. Drugs came into my life at a really early age, and I grew up in Las Vegas, and the meth epidemic was real. The show Breaking Bad, that is based on a true story. It is my life. I mean, it was like every Las Vegas kid's life that went into this route of addiction.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a really good student. I really wanted to overcome and not be like my parents, I think, at some point in my life. And I was in all these advanced placement classes, and all my friends were kind of nerds and dorks who were all really smart too. I guess I shouldn't call smart people dorks, but you know what I mean? Like in high school, that's how we categorize things.
Yes.
And this one girl that I was in all these really advanced classes with, she came over to my house one night to study. And she said, "Hey, do you want to stay up all night and study?" And I was like, "Yeah, I would love to do that." And that was the first time that I had an experience with methamphetamine. And that was it. Studying came totally off the table. Was not interested in staying up all night and studying. I was interested in staying up all night, period, and just continuing that insanity. And then another thing that really morphed me into addiction was when I got my wisdom teeth removed. And my dentist gave me that, he totally overprescribed me a prescription for Vicodin. And I remember him winking at me and saying, "Save the rest for a rainy day." And I loved the way that I felt. I loved the way that those pills made me feel. Again, because I was able to escape reality and just feel a feeling of euphoria. And that was really how my drug addiction solidified. And that was when I was around 15 years old. Ever since those drugs came into my life, it was an everyday thing. I used drugs every day since the age of 15, and I didn't stop until I was 35.
Holy crap. Wow. Okay. So when you had the near-death experience through an overdose, what did it feel like? Did you know that you had gone too far at that point with whatever you were taking at the time? And what was that experience like?
Yeah, I intentionally took a little bit more, not with the intention of dying, just with the intention of I had to go do my laundry that day. So I was like, I might as well get real messed up to go do my laundry because laundry's so boring. And I knew when I got to the laundromat that I had miscalculated and that I had took too much. And so I started to run back to my house. But by the time that I started to sprint back to my house, the whole fabric of creation started to fall all around me. So I was conscious for the first part of my spiritual experience.
Wow.
And I started to experience a Kundalini awakening. So my life force energy was becoming activated within me. And this is an energy that had never been touched or activated ever before.
Wow.
And yeah, my trip back to my house was me running down the street, and I would make it to a street corner and I'd look at the street sign and it would say Madison and Stuyvesant. And then I would run to the next block and it said Madison and Stuyvesant again. And I ran to the next block and it said Madison and Stuyvesant again. And so it felt like I was trapped inside of a loop. And then all of a sudden, all of the buildings around me in the middle of Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, all crumbled to the ground. And all that was left of them was the green lines of matrix code that make up the architecture of the buildings. Wow. And then the whole world got washed in this bright white light. And it was the most intense thing that I'd ever experienced. And then I was obviously really scared. And I was like, oh my God, what did I do? The world is falling apart. And I finally made it back to my house. And then I kind of collapsed on my bathroom floor. And that's where the rest of my experience took place. And I experienced a really heavy life review because I'm not just a traumatized person. I'm a person who has experienced trauma and then maliciously, intentionally traumatized other people because I really wanted everyone to hurt as badly as I hurt. I felt like it was my job. It was my only mission here on earth was to destroy other people's self-esteem, self-image. And I did that. And I felt that in my life review. I felt every instance where I tore someone apart, where I judged, where I attempted to control, where I destroyed. And it was so dark and it was so heavy. And I experienced my parents' suicide from their point of view and my point of view as a grieving daughter. But their point of view of being, they were drowning in an ocean of anguish. And the emotional pain, the physical pain that they were experiencing because they were in the midst of withdrawal when they made this decision to kill themselves. And it was so overwhelming. And I watched the whole scene play out, them making the decision, them writing the notes, driving to the pharmacy to pick up their refills, taking handful after handful of pills and washing it down and waiting to die. And I thought that I was trapped inside of hell because I didn't really know what was going on. All I knew was that I was seeing my dead parents. And so that must mean that I'm dead. And then I started to hear my father's voice, and he was telling me that I was worthy of all the love in the universe. I was worthy of all the love in the universe. And when I started to follow his voice, that's when I landed in the light. And that's when I had my pre-birth experience.
Oh my gosh. It's like hot in my house right now, but I have such chills listening to your story. It's incredible. Oh my God. So I don't know if the listeners who are listening, I don't know if they've ever actually had heard the concept of a life review before. Can you just take us through what exactly that was for you and what was the most, I guess, what experience stood out the most in that process?
Yeah. So the concept of a life review it's one of the mile markers that most near-death experiencers will experience. So even though every near-death experience is unique to the individual, there's a couple of points that hit on almost every near-death experience. Most people see a tunnel of light. They're visited by loved ones that have passed away. They encounter spirit guides, and they have a life review. And so inside of their life review, they experience the highlights. It's like a reel, like an Instagram reel, like how we create one at the end of the year. Like, oh, this was my 2025. Well, a life review is kind of the highlights of your entire life. And it goes by really fast. It's almost instantaneous, but you experience the feelings of what you and the other person experienced inside of those moments. And so I don't believe in condemnation. I don't believe that anybody is judged in a negative way after they die. But I do think that living your life in a righteous way, led by spiritual principles, will make for a very pleasant life review at the end of your life. And it makes for a great life as well, because it feels really good to live righteously and led by spiritual principles. So that's kind of the concept behind the life review. It's not condemning, it's not judging, it's not meant to be anything other than truth. You know, I made people feel less than, I made people feel pain. And so I was experiencing that in my life review. It was just matter of fact. It wasn't a judgment or a condemnation.
Yeah, I think what's so interesting about them is you feel everybody's emotions involved, not just yours. And then also that really helps you understand where they're coming from and see it from a different perspective.
Absolutely, definitely. And I think that it's a way for us to experience oneness as well. So this person hurt me this way, and then I hurt this person that way. And it's like this big infinity loop. We're all just causing harm or helping each other heal over and over and over again.
And so when you had the life review, was there anything that particularly stood out through that process?
The core happy memories that came through was when my sister was born, and I got to experience the joy of becoming a big sister. And I was 5 years old when my sister was born. So just being in awe of what a little baby looks like, that was something that was really beautiful in my life review. But it was very contrasted. So I kept kind of going from good to bad and good to bad. And then, you know, my parents' suicide is obviously the number one thing that really sticks out in that experience. But also throughout my active addiction, I was a prostitute, and I wouldn't just prostitute myself, but I would manipulate other women, and I would get them strung out on drugs, and I would prostitute them to make money from my own addiction. And so that was a big highlighted point in my life review as well, was experiencing what I had done to those women, how I had abused them, how I became the sexual predator in their lives, when I had let all of my own sexual abuse be my cloak of victimization all throughout my life. Well, of course I act the way I act. I've been abused. I have no other way to act because X, Y, and Z has happened to me in my life. So in my experience, I felt all the pain that I had put those women through. And that was something that really stood out for me in a very intense way.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that. I'm sure that that's not easy. And just something I thought of now, now that you've changed your life, have you, any of those people from your past, have they come out and to speak to you? Has that ever happened?
Yeah. So I'm in a 12-step program. And the 8th and 9th step are part of the amends making process. So you write a list in the 8th step of all the people that you've harmed throughout your active addiction. And then in the 9th step, you have to call those people and ask if they're willing to listen to you, make your amends. And almost all the women answered the phone for me, which was shocking.
Wow.
And they all forgave me, which is crazy.
That's amazing.
Like the feeling of unworthiness that was racked all around me in that process, I was completely convinced that they would curse me out, block me, hang up the phone. And they didn't. They just said, "Oh my God, I'm so happy that you're in recovery. You're so worthy of a better life." And I was, just absolutely floored. And I really think that that's the power of healing, and that's the power of the universe. And not all of my amends went great. Let me not sit here and act like everybody loves me and forgave me. Some people hate my guts, and they'll always think of me as the last version of myself. But those particular women, the ones that I experienced in my life review, they forgave me.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. That makes me happy to hear that.
Yeah.
I'm so glad. So after you had your life review, what happened next? I think, isn't this when you got into your pre-birth plan and you discovered what you decided for yourself? Can you talk about that?
So my experience looked a lot like a video game. And I think that's because of the generation that I'm born in. or because we're living in a simulation, or some combination of both of those things. But the way that it looked to me was I was taken through this spiritual supermarket, and there was a man leading me through, and he was wearing this plaid blazer and a fedora, and he had this big empty grocery cart, and he said, "Let's pick your life." And then I started walking through the aisles of this grocery store, and lining the aisles were these big, gigantic cereal boxes. And every cereal box had a life experience on it. And I knew as a soul that I was coming to transmute a lot of negative energy, because part of the download was that I was here for the Great Awakening, which is the transformation of consciousness. It's what we're in the process of experiencing right now. And so I was going to have to heal things for this particular family line that I picked, because I had already picked out my parents. And so I was picking out the experiences that were going to go along with being a part of a family like the one that I was going to be born into. And then I picked some other stuff for the collective itself, because again, we're in the middle of transformation of consciousness. So I had to pick up life experiences that lots of people don't have an opportunity to process in their lifetime. I was going to take on that healing. So I start grabbing all these cereal boxes. I'm like, I am so hungry. I'm so hungry for earth experience. Let me experience all of it. And my grocery cart is filled. And I picked really intense things like, you know, sexual trauma. I grabbed the little variety pack with like the 10, 20 different kinds of cereal inside it. I'm like, I'll just take all those. Let me take all of them.
Yeah.
And then, you know, like addiction, homelessness, prostitution, all of these things are so detrimental. The emotional abuse, the physical abuse that I experienced with other people. And then I also picked boxes that I had not experienced in my life yet. So I was seeing them inside the pre-birth planning. I was seeing that I picked the cereal box of recovery. That's not something I had experienced in my life yet. Oh. I saw spiritual awakening go into the cart, not something I had experienced yet. I was going to be an author. I'm going to be a teacher. None of those boxes resonated with me. All the ones around the suffering, those I understood because those were part of my life. And then all of these other boxes, I just thought, those will probably go in the go backs when I get to the register, because that's not for me. That's not for my life. And the one story that I talk about a lot is that I did pick this box that was labeled childhood sexual trauma. And when I picked the box, a little orb of light came out with the box. And that was the soul of the man who molested me when I was a little kid. And we came orb to orb with each other, and we came into contract, and we loved each other so much. My human mind cannot comprehend or even properly explain what I mean when I tell you that my child molester, the person who molested me as a child, he loved me so intensely in spirit that we decided to play these roles for each other, that he was going to be the villain in my story. And we were doing it for the evolution of ourselves. And it doesn't make a lot of sense in the human comprehension. It was like I was given all of the information of all of infinity. And then when I came back into my body, it was like I was given this little 2 gig flash drive. And they were like, here's the information that you can bring back. And here's, you know, your only way of explaining it. And it's there's no way to explain it when I have this little tiny flash drive. But anyway, there it all made sense. And I had a massive acceptance around everything. And again, the information around the pre-birth plan to me means that I'm not a victim. I am a divine co-creator. And that piece of information has helped me so tremendously in this next stage of my life.
God, I got so many chills with that one, especially. I think that what you had shared about your childhood molester and that orb, that has been one of the most profound experiences of my life too. Not that I've had that, but when I changed my mentality and I started to think about the really difficult people in my life, one in particular, narcissistic personality, significant role in my life. And I think about that person as somebody who's really helped be my biggest teacher, who's helped me grow. I don't know that I'd be interested in spirituality if it wasn't for that person. And I sometimes think about that person as that little spirit or orb agreeing to be here and take on this horrible role and live this existence that seems so miserable to serve me. And that has really been a profound way to look at things for myself.
Yes, I totally 100% agree with you. And narcissists can recover. Like, I am a recovered narcissist. You know, in my last version of my life, I was a narcissist to a T. I fit every piece of that definition. And I
Wow.
believe in miracles. I believe that everyone will have a spiritual awakening in this lifetime. I really, truly believe that. But you don't have to be present for it. You don't have to stay in a relationship with a narcissist because, like, you're waiting for the transformation to take place. You're right. These people are our teachers. I have so many people in my life that I'm like, I hate this spiritual teacher. This is the worst lesson. Just let me be done with it. But the thing is that until I actually show up for class and learn and implement the lesson in my life, the lesson will just continue to come back over and over and over again. So if you're a person who's attracted a narcissist in your life and then you leave that particular relationship, guess what? Another one's waiting for you because that soul lesson is not over. You have to show up for class, heal, forgive, move on, advocate for yourself. A lot of times in relationships with narcissists, it's, you know, the lesson is that you have to know that you're worth more than some kind of toxic relationship. You have to know that you're worth more than what you're experiencing. And so instead of feeling like a victim, why do I keep attracting the same person into my life over and over and over again? It's really, what is this mirror trying to show me? How do I feel about myself? Why is this my mirror? Everybody is a mirror to us, every single person. The person that you despise the most on earth and the person that you admire the most on earth, everyone is a mirror.
I think it's so important that we're talking about this because I can hope and imagine that people listening are hopefully thinking about those people in their lives who are their greatest teachers and maybe find a way to forgive or maybe find a way to deal with a situation that has been really, really difficult. So fingers crossed, that's what comes out of this conversation in addition to this discussion about a pre-birth plan. So after you filled your shopping cart and you went to check out, what happened next?
Well, after I filled up my shopping cart, my awareness kind of shifted over into another scene. And I was with the guides that were with me throughout my light experience. And I told them that I was really grateful for all this cool cosmic information, but I would not be returning to Earth because that place is really ghetto and I definitely don't want to go back there. It feels gross. And they said, no, you're going back. This is not, you don't have a choice. And it wasn't in a punishing way. It wasn't like, we're making you go back. It was more, hey, you signed up for something. You've been training for lifetimes for this one particular lifetime. There's no way that we're letting you miss the main event. This is what it's all about. This is transformation of consciousness. And so I refused to go back into my body. And, you know, I was naked on my bathroom floor, totally blasted out. And I said, she is glitched. She is broken. I will not shove my infinite spirit back into that hot mess. It's not going to happen. And they told me that I would be reborn into a baby and that my new body, this little baby, she would be taking my spiritual shopping cart into her own life experience. And so basically they were saying that I was going to have to live my entire life over and that I would have more cereal boxes put in my cart because of the family that she was being born into. She needed a couple of more life experiences to make the life complete. Oh. And I was like, oof, no, these are not good options, but I'll go with option A. If I only have two, I'm not going to start over from zero. No way. But I was very firm and I said, there's no way to heal this body that I just came from. I just want you guys to know that. And they just kind of laughed at me. They were like, yeah, okay. Like, I don't know anything about infinite power and healing. You know, I don't know anything about God. But they told me that the second part of my life was going to be really different. The first part of my life was boot camp, and it was hardcore. The raining sideways. There's a bald guy screaming in my face, pushing my head in the mud, doing 1,000 push-ups. It was really uncomfortable. But the second part of my mission was going to be carrying out this whole soul plan. It was going to be meeting my mentors, meeting my soul family, finding my teachers, being part of community, creating community, getting to experience all those life experience boxes that I hadn't gotten to yet inside the cart. And that all I had to do was just trust them. And I was like, I do not trust you guys. You have given me no reason to trust you. And then I just found my awareness back in my body. And yeah, it took me a long time to realize that my experience was a real one. And I was just kind of walking around as if I had had the most insane overdose of my life.
Gosh, I've never been on drugs like that, or at all really. But I've taken medicine that has made me feel weird, and I hate it. I hate the feeling of not being in control of my body and feeling weird and out of it. So I can't imagine the way you must have felt when you woke up. I've had hangovers, so I'm sure it's like that, but times a million.
Yeah.
What did you do?
I think people who don't like using drugs might have had a past life where they died from a drug overdose. And when they went back, they were like, ooh, I don't want to do that again. Because drugs are really fun. It always really shocks me when people are like, oh, I don't do that. I'm like, why? What's wrong with you? But I mean, like, they're crazy and they're super dangerous.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Wow. Okay. So I can't imagine how you felt when you woke up. It was probably pretty bad. How did you get out of that situation and then like get to where you are now?
Well, there was a bunch of really divine signs and synchronicities that led me down a very narrow path, the path of spiritual awakening, the path of recovery, the path of the life that I was always meant to live, but just kept ignoring the internal GPS that was telling me to stop moving the car and make a U-turn. Like, for instance, all of my drug dealers decided to stop selling drugs on the exact same day. And these men didn't know each other. I'm talking about 10 different guys from 10 different parts of town that have never connected with each other. They're all people from different areas of my life. And every single one of them blocked me and told me to never call them again. And they no longer wanted me as a customer. And then I was trying to buy drugs on the street. And every time that I picked up a bundle of drugs, it would be whack or bunk or it would be fake, or it would start raining and it would get wet and then I couldn't use it, or I put it in my pocket and there was a mysterious hole in my pocket and it fell out. And I'm like, everything that could happen to get me onto another path was happening. And I found myself on this train and I had no destination, but I was really lost and broken and confused. And a man stepped onto the train and he sat directly across from me. And he had a blinged out 12-step fellowship necklace around his neck, the emblem for the 12-step fellowship that I belonged to. And I heard this voice and it told me that that was my path and I had to follow him. And so I went up to this strange man on the train and I asked him if he happened to be going to a meeting. And he said that he was on his way to one. And he asked if I wanted to go with him. And so I followed this stranger on the train into a 12-step meeting. And that was the beginning of my recovery journey. And then through some more signs and synchronicities, I found myself in a long-term rehab. And that's where I integrated my spiritual experience. It's where I had a safe place to feel my feelings. I had never felt my feelings before. I never dealt with the grief of my parents. I had been medicating it for 11 years. At that point in time, they had been gone. And man, those feelings hit me like a tsunami. It was so painful. It was like I was feeling 11 years of grief in a matter of a month. Ugh. And it just processed through me like a flood. And it was so overwhelming, but I could not use drugs behind it. And it's because I was locked inside of a facility. And then, that's where I started to devour every spiritual text and educate myself. It was the first time I was ever using my mind. Before my experience, I had a very limited brain capacity. My brain was only programmed to find drugs, use drugs, and rinse and repeat. My only vocabulary was this long laundry list of substances that I used and then how much money it cost to be with me. I didn't have any space for any other thoughts because that was my whole life. And now I felt like I was free from these shackles. I was let out of the prison of my own making. And I was able to educate myself and explore consciousness and spiritual awakening and my faith. And so I got to do that while I was inside this long-term facility for a year and a half. And then I came back out into the world and I found all my spiritual communities. I found my soul family. I found my creative collaborators that I was going to work with. And I started to experience some of those cereal boxes that I hadn't gotten to in my life yet.
Well, you make it sound like it was easy. I can't imagine that process
Yeah, I
was
know.
very easy. Oh, except for the month worth of like 11 years of pain all coming at once.
Oh no, it all really sucked a lot. But I mean, it sounds really pretty in a story. But I mean, imagine like this is years of integrating a hardcore spiritual experience. And then also without drugs, like you take drugs away to a person who has addiction as one of their pre-birth planning plot points. I don't just have drug addiction. I have addiction to eating disorders. I have addiction to other people, to codependency, to porn and masturbating, to limerence, to person obsession. I've got all the addictions. And so I got rid of one layer of addiction, and then I had to deal with all my other layers of addiction, and they go deep. And really, it's addiction to suffering. I think that I'm supposed to suffer. And so I'm constantly in a state of suffering. And so I had to unlearn and reprogram all of my attitudes and behaviors and all of the underlying wounds that have made me believe that I'm not worthy of a good life.
Wow. When did you realize that it was the suffering, and what is it that the addiction helps with? Because I would think that the addiction would help numb it.
Definitely. Yeah, all the addictions do. Suffering isn't actually it's not our baseline. I mean, there's a lot of things in life that make it feel like Earth is just about suffering, but our true core is nothing but spirit. And then, we come to Earth and we get to experience suffering and duality, but we're supposed to be experiencing the transformation of that. So to go from a person who is prone to suffering and then experience the infiniteness of your spirit. And I think that for me, the addiction has it's numbed my whole Earth experience because it's really dense here. There's a lot of really intense things going on. And so the different layers of my addiction, they just try to separate me from my core because it doesn't understand what my core is. It's scared of it. So I talk about it in the terms of this is my shadow. So I am light, and then there's a shadow that's cast, but it's not real. Like shadows aren't real. They're just, an optical illusion that we experience when we think that we're blocking out light. And so all the manifestations of my addiction and all of my behaviors and patterns are pieces of my shadow. And so my whole mission here now is to integrate my shadow, to make it a part of my light, to have all of my parts working in unison for connection to spirit, to connection to source, and then helping other people do the same thing. One of my big pieces of my shadow is that I'm really judgmental and I'm super defensive and I can be really controlling. Those are the attitudes and behaviors that show up in my life today now that I've gotten rid of most of my layers of addiction. I still have a little problem with workaholism, but other than that, I'm a little bit of a productivity addict now. But the controlling, defensive, judgment, those are my shortcomings. Those are the pieces of my personality that get me into trouble. And so I have to, on a daily basis, I have a ritual where I integrate those pieces of myself so that they just can't be in the driver's seat. They can come along for the ride. They just have to be in the back of the van.
Well, I think you are so fascinating. And I can only imagine that with everything that you've been through and what you've healed, you are probably an incredible teacher to those who are dealing with some of those things. For people listening who, I don't even want to say the benefit of, but like who have not had a near-death experience, to understand what their soul blueprint is or their plan. I know that I've thought this myself, and I'm sure other people think too, like, think about what is my purpose here? What am I supposed to be here doing? Do you have anything that you can share to help people figure those things out?
Yes, absolutely. So purpose is not as rigid as the concept is. Like, we think that we have to find our life's purpose and it's just this one thing. I'm supposed to be a musician. Like, no, that's not what purpose is about. A purpose, your purpose can be about anything, but I feel like at the core, it's usually going to be about something around service to humanity, service to your family, service to other people. And your purpose lies in your passion. So what's something that you could talk about for hours and never get tired of? For me, it's myself. I love talking about me. So that's where my purpose is. But really, and if you don't have something yet that you feel that way about, if you hear that question and you go, well, you're totally blank, nothing comes up, that's amazing. That's the best place to be because you get to discover it. You don't have a lot of opportunities to be in that space of discovery. So really embrace that space. It's the best. I had the same question come up for me in the beginning of my spiritual journey. What am I here to do? What's my purpose? Even with the download of the pre-birth plan, I still didn't know what to make of that. And so I started trying stuff on. Just like when you go shopping at a store and you're in the dressing room and you're like, is this dress cute on me? Is this personality type cute on me? Is this spiritual principle aligned with the most authentic version of myself? And you get to design it. You get to design who it is that you're going to show up as for the rest of your experience. Once we blast into spiritual awareness, we have this great opportunity to really become the most authentic version of ourselves. And it can be scary. It's scary to let yourself be seen, warts and all, but it's so freeing to be free of judgment, to be free of shame, to be free of guilt. That's where my purpose lies. I just want to be free of those things, and anything else that happens in the interim is just icing on the cake. And so I really encourage you to think about what it is that you feel passionate about. And if you don't know, start looking, because it's the best part of the journey, truly.
Oh, thank you so much for that advice. I really think that it's so helpful to be reminded that just lean into those curiosities, lean into your passion. For me, it's all things spirituality. Like, the crazier the better, usually. But I love this so much. I'm having so much fun talking to you. You're a blast. I adore you. And I think our listeners will too. And I think they're going to want more of you. And I know that you're much more than this incredible story that you have. You offer a lot to humanity. Can you talk a little bit about your work and where people can find more of you and learn more from you?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for this space. So I'm on all social media. My handle on everything is Buddha Betty. It's a play on words. I'm not really a Buddha. I don't even follow Buddhism. It's just a funny play on words. And I would love to connect with anybody. So I do private coaching. I host really affordable workshops. I do small, intimate kind of masterminds once a month. And again, my whole work is around transformation coaching. I used to be a homeless meth head prostitute strung out on heroin. Okay. Today I'm not. Today I'm a wildly abundant individual. I'm surrounded by spiritual community. I'm living my soul's purpose, and I'm of service to humanity. And the fact that I could be those two people in one lifetime is incredible. And if I can do that, you can do it too. And you don't have to die to get there. I did, because I'm stubborn as fuck, but you don't have to. And so I would love to connect with anybody. I also am the co-creator of this spiritual organization called The Wheel. And we have virtual meetups once a week. It's a free community, and we do live in person, depending on what city you're in. I host one of our in-person communities inside of New York City. So if you're in the New York City area, please reach out so that we can get you connected. And it's a cool, conscious community. We host retreats. We're going to Tulum, Mexico in March of 2026. We're really excited about that. We're going to have 8 spiritual teachers, 20 guests, and it's going to be pretty amazing. I'm really excited for it. And I got to do all of this in just a state of creation, that as soon as I said to the universe, I'm ready for the next part of my life, doors just started flinging open. And that's not exclusive to me. That's literally for any of us. I'm not uniquely special. We're all special, and we all have access to this part of awakening.
Thank you for that beautiful reminder. And we'll be sure to link all of the information that you had shared below so that everybody can access it easily. Honey, I have to let you go. But before I do, I have a few questions I like to ask all my guests. The first is, reflecting on our conversation, what's one key takeaway you hope our listeners remember about the soul's pre-birth plan?
Okay, one thing that I want to say about pre-birth planning is that if this concept is not helpful to you, you don't have to believe it. The whole world is a system of beliefs, and we each get to design our own system of beliefs. This belief, I mean, it's a deep spiritual knowing for me, but this belief is empowering to me. But it could be really hurtful and detrimental to somebody else. You wouldn't go up to a mother who just lost their child and say, well, you planned it before you got here. Get over it. That's harmful. And maybe if you are somebody who's experiencing a really intense trauma or a really hard cereal box, you don't want to believe that you signed up for this. That's okay. You don't have to believe it. Put it on a shelf in the back of your mind. Maybe at some point throughout your experience, you'll pick it up, or maybe you won't. Either way, this is just something that has really helped me in the healing process. And so that's why I feel very called to share about it. But if you do believe in this concept, just know that you cannot fuck anything up. Your major plot points, your partners, your children, all of these major events in your life, they're already predetermined. You don't have to work that hard to figure it out. Just surrender and flow, and it will come to you. I promise you that. So you never have to be scared to make the wrong decision, because there's no such thing as the wrong decision. It will all lead you back to the path that you're supposed to be on.
I think that was really important for you to say, especially for people who are listening who are like, I can't with this.
Yes.
Thank you for that. I think that was really, really important. And also, just a side note, so where do you think free will falls in all of this pre-birth plan stuff?
Yeah, it's like, I used to think that free will didn't exist, and I was like, I am a robot inside of a game, and like I have no control over anything. So this is the way that I understand it now, after years of integration and channeling and reading books about the topic too, is that the major plot points are set up, and everything that we do in between is free will. So like for me, 3 of my major plot points are addiction, recovery, spiritual awakening. Now, I could have ended my life lesson of addiction when I was 18. That was the first time I ever went to rehab. I've always known that I had a problem with drug addiction. I could have stopped using drugs then, experienced recovery, had a slow and steady spiritual awakening, and I would have hit all 3 of my plot points, and it would have looked way different. I would have become an author way sooner in my life, become a teacher way sooner in my life. That was one plot line, right? That's plan A. But I was using my free will, and I kept deciding to stay inside of the pattern instead of going to the next level of the game. And so I just kept playing the same level of the game over and over again for 20 years. And so that's where free will comes in. Yes, like your husband is waiting for you. Your children are waiting to be born. All of those things are predetermined. But you get to decide what that looks like in between. If you want to keep dating losers while you're waiting for your husband to manifest, that's totally fine. You can do that, but don't wait too long. Like make sure that you're saving space for the universe to give you what you actually wanted and what you actually deserve.
That is a really important point too. So thank you for saying that. Something I can kind of relate to as being a divorced woman, struggling to find people dating. Anyway, okay. Second question, if someone's just beginning their journey to exploring consciousness, where do they start? What advice would you give them?
Oh my God, devour everything. Keep on reading, keep on consuming content, find the people that light you up, find the people that resonate, and stay open-minded. Because some of the spiritual teachers that I started following when I first came into this journey, I listen to them now and I don't resonate with them at all. And that's because I've integrated and I've learned, and I took what I needed from them and I integrated it. And now I'm ready to move on to the next spiritual teacher. I think that things are always evolving. And so you don't have to stay stuck in one pattern or one teacher or one belief or one philosophy. But I would say that if you're just starting this journey, find the things that light you up. Keep reading them. I read so many books. I wanted to learn everything. I read every sacred text. I looked for the underlying truth in all of them, and it was just be cool. I read all of these books just to find out that I just needed to be cool. Like that was it. Just be cool, be kind. That's it. It's real simple. But yeah, just keep on finding the things that light you up and remain open minded. And don't fall into that trap of spiritual ego. But I think everybody in the beginning of their journey does. Like, you are not superior to anybody else. If you think that you're awake and everybody else is asleep, guess what? There's a part of you that's sleeping real heavy, because it wouldn't bother you. If you were integrated and truly spiritual, it wouldn't bother you where other people are on their journeys. You would just have acceptance, love, and compassion for everybody where they're at.
So good. Last question, in your point of view, what does it mean to live life consciously?
I think living life consciously is being aware, being so aware, like annoyingly aware, but just being aware of everything. My whole life is designed around searching for signs and connection and finding spiritual friends. And I have to be aware consciously in order to be able to receive those things. And so I think living consciously has a lot to do with awareness, and also just, again, living my life led by spiritual principles: honesty, open-mindedness, willingness, compassion, unconditional love, even when I definitely don't want to unconditionally love other people. But just living my life, trying to live my life led by those spiritual principles, is all that I can do.
All right. Well, that's all I have for you. Thank you so much. This has been really, really fun.
Yeah, I loved it. Thanks so much.
Thank you. And any last words for our audience today?
No, I'm so grateful for you. Thank you for what you're doing for the collective. Thank you for creating content. I can't wait to see who this touches and who really needed to hear this. And I'm positive that somebody will comment and say, you guys talked about everything that I really needed to hear. And, we create ripples by doing things like that.
Beautiful. Thank you for those kind words. And to all of our listeners, if this conversation resonated with you, I invite you to explore more of Betty's work. Her website is, as a reminder, BuddhaBetty.com. You'll find her offerings for healing support and resources to guide you on your path, whether you're just beginning or already walking into deep awareness. And if this resonated with you, please share it with a friend. It really, really helps us out a lot. We appreciate it. So I'm Kristen Leigh Griffiths. Until next time, stay curious, live consciously, and keep seeking clarity. Much love. Bye for now.
Nice.